Welcome, welcome everyone. We are here with Jai Uttal, who we had the great pleasure of meeting, I guess, right before COVID hit. There was a beautiful concert that you did in Marin before COVID hit, and having followed your work for years and years, to finally meet you was such a treasure, and that concert was incredible. So anyway, it's just so great to have this time with you here today to chat about your life and where you're going, and of course your new album. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
So before we get started, I'd love to just tell viewers who are new to your work a little bit about you, so they know where you stem from, some of which we'll dive into during our interview. But Jai is a Grammy-nominated sacred music composer. I love that, sacred music composer. He's also a recording artist, a multi-instrumentalist and vocalist who combines influences from India with American rock and jazz, and the result is what you might call world spirit music. Music and spiritual practice became linked for Jai when he met the great Indian saint 𝐸𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐵𝐻. As a result, Kirtan, which we're definitely going to cover today, would become the center of Jai's musical and spiritual life, giving him what he calls his soul support system. Having traveled extensively through India, Bhakti Yoga has become his personal path, and he's been leading, teaching, and performing Kirtan around the world for close to 50 years. And he still performs. Anthony and I had the pleasure of attending another concert recently, which he did solo, which was just absolutely beautiful. And we're going to include snippets, just a few little snippets from that experience at the end of this interview, so you all get to experience just a little bit of what he's like live. And he also has a new album out, which we're going to talk about today as well. So yay, let's get started.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about, don't we?
We do. How fun. I know. So many questions, more questions than we have time for today, but that's okay. We'll dive right in. I would like to go and scroll back, rewind the clock before we even get to today. And that's your musical career early on. So like us, you're New Yorkers, right? And you were the son of a record executive, which I didn't know until recently. So, and you say that every week your dad would bring home top 10 singles and ask your opinions. Can you tell us about that early chapter and how it influenced your music?
Well, I think, the top 10 R&B and pop singles of this was in the, I guess, mid 60s. There was such a mid to late 60s. There was such a amazing, great revolution in music, and this was just when my musical DNA was sort of establishing itself. I started playing piano and learning piano, which I don't play now. I mean, a little, but I don't really play now. But I started when I was around 6. So, so the musical kind of education began really early. But when my father would bring those records home every week, my sister is a year and a half older, so he would sit us down and he wanted our young people's opinions about the songs and critiques. So we really listened carefully. And even though my music is so influenced by Indian music and world music, still the roots of more R&B, but like soul music, R&B, as well as the pop music of that time, was really imprinted on me. And I feel like the format, that's not the right word, but the concept of songs, like where it starts and you tell a story in a very short amount of time, is still really with me, which might sound funny, knowing that sometimes I'll lead a kirtan that will last 40 minutes. When I was recording my last couple of albums ago, Roots Rock Rama, I kept referring to Revolver by the Beatles, where I felt that each song, which was 3.5 minutes maximum, told a complete story. So I sang, even with a chanting song or mantra song, perhaps we can tell, you know, share the emotion, share the spirit, and tell the story, which is not exactly a story, but you know, the emotion of it in a short frame, in a short time framework. Anyway, so that's one of the things that really affected me, from hearing all those singles. My father also took me to some recording sessions when I was young, and one that really influenced me and just affected me was by Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. I'm not sure if you remember them. It was a song, Good Golly, Miss Molly, and Devil with a Blue Dress On. And it was a big hit. And, you know, it's not something that I would listen to today, but as a young person in the studio, seeing that happen, the energy was so amazing. And it was so like a volcano, you know, and I knew I wanted to do that. I never, I didn't grow up thinking I wanted to be a star or anything along that line, because at the same time as I, you know, experienced all that through my father's music, I had this image of myself, and this started in my teenage years as as being like a holy man, spiritual musician, and I saw myself, you know, in white robes, in a little hut on top of a hill, playing music, and people would come and listen to the healing music. And so I didn't actually see myself as a singer. That came a little bit later. But so those two threads kind of commingled in my whole both musical path, career path, and spiritual path.
Yeah, and also jazz and reggae as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, as soon as I heard Bob Marley, when was that? In 71, 72, I think, something like that. That just like, as far as Western music, that just supplanted everything else.
Yeah, I think Bob Marley shifted things for so many of us.
Many people, yeah.
So you wanted to, this is before the spiritual part of you. I remember you saying at your concert, you wanted to do rock and roll. You wanted to sing rock and roll. Was that something before the spiritual awakening in you came about?
Not really. I think, the attunement to the spiritual aspect of music, and also, you know, the uh, soul, heart level yearning for wholeness, for healing, um, started with me at the get-go.
Mhm.
I mean, not. Well, I remember, you know, one of my very, very first loves is the banjo, and five-string banjo, and I got exposed to five-string banjo when I was around 11, and I distinctly remember strumming those strings and feeling, it, you know, for the first time in my life, a sense of safety. That the sound created a kind of a sanctuary of safety. My home life, my early home life, was very unsafe, family life, uh, and yeah. So, but from the very beginning, I felt that music was a sacred sanctuary, and whether it was rock and roll or, you know, I was really into the Appalachian mountain music for a while, and then, wow, you know, then Jimi Hendrix and all of that, and the Beatles and Bob Dylan, you know, my favorites, and then getting into John Coltrane, and then tuning in when I was maybe about 15, I guess, to Indian music. Um, you know, it evolved, and it got deeper and deeper and deeper, and then with Indian music, I saw that actually the music was, uh, contextually created to support the spiritual path.
Mhm.
And so then it became more, you know, I understood it more. I had a little bit more framework. But from the beginning, the music was a holy thing for me, a sanctuary for me.
Was that something that your father instilled in you, or just
No, no, no.
the beginning?
No, it was not something that my father, for him, music was business.
Hmm.
And well, it was interesting. He started, he was a songwriter and a composer and a pianist. And he got very, very frustrated very young that he was not able to support a family doing that. So he turned to the music business, which seemed like the next, seemed like a good logical step for him. And so, unfortunately, by the end of his life, he couldn't stand music anymore because it was so tied in with um, business, money, stress, all of that. And so he retired from music and he became a travel agent. And and then after he did that for a couple of years, he started enjoying music again.
Funny. Everything comes full circle. So
Yeah.
speaking of travel, let's go to India. So you went there many, many times, and I found that interesting because, I did a lot of travel. And as you know, I run a travel magazine. So I've been to a lot of places, including India. But what fascinates me is that you kept returning. You kept going back there. And then you met your guru when you were not looking for a guru, right? You were not looking for a spiritual teacher. So tell us about that chapter, because that really led you to Kirtan, and it led you to this whole Bhakti yoga path.
Yeah. Well, I got initiated into a yoga tradition and by an Indian yoga teacher when I was 16, maybe 17 or so, 18. Anyway, before I ever went to India, here in California, and this Indian yogi introduced me to Kirtan. And he taught us a lot of chants and a lot of Kirtan mantras. And I started making up my own melodies and playing them on guitar and stuff. This is before I ever went to India. And really, really enjoying singing with people and singing these mantras with people and just the feeling of that heart-opening feeling with that happens with singing kirtan. But then I went to India in the first time, and I had a very full agenda. I was going to meet the guru of this man who had initiated me in California, and I was quite excited. And well, as it turned out, when we arrived in New Delhi, we found out that he was in jail for mass murder. Now we're going to jump over that, but just to say that so my agenda was just cut. And not only was my agenda cut, I was also like, okay, that's it for gurus. I just have no interest in gurus, But and I was 19, I guess. But the thing was that, well, then we had no idea what to do because we didn't know. We hadn't looked into where to go in India. We had a set plan, and without that plan, we were kind of cut loose. And so I had met Ram Dass, several years earlier when he first came back from India, and I won't say that we became close friends, but we became acquaintances, and he came over to the communal house that I was living in Berkeley at the time, and we sang kirtan together, and so I knew him a little bit, And then I was walking around New Delhi, and I went into a spiritual bookshop, and the man told me that Ram Dass was giving classes at a hotel nearby. So I went to the hotel, and they told me that Ram Dass had just left to go to the small town 3 hours or so away, a town called Vrindavan, to see his guru. So my friends and I we were traveling. There was 5 of us actually traveling together, and we went to this town just because it was kind of like picking up the breadcrumbs, following the breadcrumbs. What are we gonna do? Where are we gonna go? And so we went to this town, and long story short, that's where we met Maharaji, 𝐷𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐷𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐷𝐻. Now, at very first, well, I was, interested to see Ram Dass's guru, but I was not searching, right? At that point, I was so jaded. I had, because there's a lot of stuff in the story that I'm not sharing right now. It was just like I was so jaded about gurus. And a 19-year-old like thinks they kind of know everything. Um, once you get to your 70s, you're just like, wow, you don't know anything. But there I was 19 and I thought I knew a lot. And well, the thing was that sitting with Maharaji was bafflingly wonderful. Bafflingly because I didn't know why it was wonderful. Um, but it was. And although I didn't have any sense, oh, this is my guru, this is it, now I found it. It wasn't like that. It was just like each day would pass and all I wanted to do was wake up the next day and go again to his ashram. And the back, so in this town of Vrindavan, this is where Krishna lived as a young man and where Radha lived. Radha lived her whole life there, but Krishna lived there as a young man. And it's a pretty sacred pilgrimage place in India. In those days, there was no cars allowed, and it was really, really peaceful and just amazing. And every other house pretty much was a little temple. And in every temple, they chanted. And mostly kirtan mantras, sometimes Vedic texts, which were much more complex, but a lot of kirtan. And in Maharaji's ashram, there was 24 hours a day kirtan being sung. So kirtan became the backdrop, the soundtrack for this, amazing time. First meeting the man who I later realized was my guru and many lifetimes protector, savior. Again, I didn't know it at first, but it slowly revealed. And yeah, so the soundtrack was all kirtan. And so I had been singing kirtan before I got there, but somehow being there and hearing this kirtan with so much, inner transformation happening, it took on a completely different level. And it almost, I could say, became the sound of my own blood, heart beating through my body and my veins.
Yeah, I think there's something really powerful with kirtan, right? Even for those who experience it just one time, because there's something vibrationally really powerful about the language, the Sanskrit language, right? There's something really powerful in that. And then also the vibration of the music itself.
Yeah. Well, I've seen so many different reactions. Some people will come to a kirtan and, just not get it and never want to come to another kirtan, which of course is totally fine, but so many times I've seen people come to a kirtan never having experienced it before and being so moved and blown out and not even, not mentally, intellectually, really understanding what it is, but still, as you said, feeling the power of the language and the power of the repetition and then the beauty, hopefully, in the music and the melodies, the rhythms,
When you sing, something happens. Your voice changes a bit. I can hear it now in your voice. Talking is different than when you're singing. You seem to open up, didn't you? Something happened. Were you aware of that when you started singing, that there was a change?
No, not really. And for the first, I was very, very afraid of singing in front of people. The first maybe decade of kirtan singing was just in groups of friends,
right,
where we could just sing out. Nobody, usually there wasn't even a leader calling us. It wasn't even call and response. And there was wonderful way of just singing and getting lost in the group sound and the group energy. But as as someone who was singing in front of other people, it wasn't until I was in my mid 40s, really, I had the sense, it was like sing or die, not physically, but on the soul level, because I was so terrified of it. And as a result of being so terrified, I was, would always kind of embolden myself with some alcohol, drugs, something. And so then I began to sing in front of people, and then, sing for people, lead people, or just singing my own songs for people, for myself, for God. But how do I put this? I began to get letters and emails and messages and people talking to me, telling me the very profound effect that my music and my singing had on them. And for a long time it just went over my head. I knew that it had a healing component for myself, and that was where I was coming from. I felt so wounded, and I knew that the singing helped my own inner healing.
Mhm.
I think it wasn't till after I got sober, because after some time it was like, okay, I couldn't continue in that way, and I got sober. It took a little effort, but it was blessed completely. The process was completely blessed, and then I began to experience my own voice, and how it's not like a different me, but it's a different side of me that emerges when I sing. And wow, it's so vital to my own well-being. I don't feel like I'm like channeling or anything like that. I just somehow or another, the practice, whether it's singing mantras or singing, holy songs in English, but mostly mantras, somehow the practice um, goes into and then comes out of a deeper place in my being. And I feel it in my molecules. I feel it, like really viscerally. And when I'm singing, people have said, oh, they come to hear me sing and they go out of their bodies, they go on these journeys and stuff. And, I don't feel that ever. I feel extremely grounded, but I do feel like the soul place pulses, and that's what comes through my voice. And when it, in our Kirtan camps and workshops, I try, it's very, ephemeral, kind of. It's hard to explain or guide, but I try to guide people to, okay, it's not just the breath, but the sound that's actually vibrating in your physical body when you sing. Direct it into the place of emotions that you normally don't live in, and whether those emotions are painful or whether they're like super joyful, try to get the sound vibration to come from there. And then I think that the practice becomes filled with Shakti, filled with power. But it's obviously it doesn't happen overnight. And I think that it happened to me from the very beginning, but I don't think that I was able to become aware of it until I became much more vulnerable. And because sobriety made me vulnerable, and yeah, it's an incomplete answer, but it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, beautifully said, though,
Mhm.
because I think it's so hard for all of us to become vulnerable. But we know, right, from doing the work that when we become vulnerable, we're set free. because in that vulnerability, it gives other people permission to be vulnerable, because unless you can watch someone with reverence, right? You know, as people, not to put you on a pedestal, but I just mean as a performer, as a musician, you know, people feel these healing energies and they feel this transformation through your music. And so then suddenly they see you vulnerable and it's like, wow, he's vulnerable and he's being healed. I can be vulnerable and maybe I'll go through that process too. I think there's something to that.
I want to share a little story. So, you know, back to the sobriety, I was in a treatment center and detoxing and et cetera, et cetera. And I started to feel really great. And, but I felt like, you know, being on stage was such a trigger for me that this is fine. I had to, you know, I'll sing for myself and play music for myself, but I had to find another line of work because that self-consciousness of being on stage, you know, I couldn't handle it. So, like toward the end of my stay there, we watched a movie of Robin Williams live at Carnegie Hall. And Robin Williams is, you know, was such an icon, is such an icon of what a performer, what a comedian, you know. So we're watching this and it's pretty awesome. And around 10 minutes into his performance, he runs to the tip of the stage, goes down into a fetal position, and he says, "This is the first time I've ever performed sober." Because he had just come out of treatment for his cocaine addiction, and then he ran off the stage, and you know, then he came back, and to this day, I don't know if this was scripted or if it was completely spontaneous, but it didn't matter. It kind of showed me the way to do it, which was to be as real and as vulnerable and as broken as and be completely honest about it to people, and you know, not saying going into like a group therapy session, but but just being real, and for quite a long time after that, and even sometimes now, but less so, I'll talk to the audience and say, you know, I'm feeling extremely shy right now, and I'm a little shaky, but here we go. And um, I would say that I'm not feeling it as much now, but I do. It does come, you know, and something about just saying that to the audience. Oh wow, you know, the effect of one person being completely open and vulnerable is like a ripple, and
Yeah.
and it's just like, you know, in Kirtan and in Bhakti we're putting our attention and putting our love and our being and our emotions and everything into our relationship with God. But it's not any different than our relationship with our beloveds. So we know that, like, you know, your partner, your lover, your beloved person, the more vulnerable you are, the deeper the relationship becomes. And so it's the same thing with community, and it's the same thing with spirit. It's all kind of like, the more open and vulnerable and honest we can be, the deeper the whole picture gets, you know. And because I don't see the relationship with God as being a different story than the relationship with our fellow humans,
And with
uh,
ourselves.
and with ourselves. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, in Bhakti, well, my guru would always say, feed people and remember God. And he said, you know, selfless service, you can't aspire to selfless service. He says selfless service comes only by divine grace, but you can still feed people and help people, and to the best of your ability, you know, whether it's through mantra or however, you know, keep your mind on the divine, and all the traditions. It says, you know, when you can see God in all people, in all beings, and serve God in all beings, then then you're beginning. Then you've made your entryway, sort of. I mean, it's the goal and it's the path.
Seeing God in ourselves too, right?
It has to, yeah, it has to be both.
All right, so I'm gonna tune into the voice, because your guru had said all music comes from the voice, and we spoke about this just a little bit now, where you felt vulnerable, and we've shared with you that suddenly on our spiritual path, the harmonium is next. And I think I shared it with you just like for a few seconds there, and I'm like, really, the harmonium? I'm a piano player. I don't like this harmonium thing. Like it sounds too much like an organ, right? So, and it doesn't.
It is an organ.
Right, I know. So we're going through this vulnerability of trying to let go and be that vessel and just let it come through us and not really worry whether we're on key or whatever. So I'd love for you to chat about that for you, because, the guru said all music comes from the voice. And then when you let go, suddenly something shifts, and it's almost like your higher self takes over and you can sing.
Well, I want to preface what I'm going to say with saying that kirtan doesn't have to be done with a harmonium. In India, traditionally, well, harmonium is not that old. It's like several hundred years old, but mostly in India, kirtan is done with harmonium, but it doesn't have to be. And as you've seen when you've seen me perform, I loved doing some kirtan songs with my guitar and with different harmonies and different kind of moods, different musical moods that come through. So it doesn't have to be harmonium. I started studying music with 𝐴𝐿 when I was like 18 or something. He was a great, great master of classical Indian music, and his instrument was the sarod, a 25-string instrument. So that's what I started studying. And in his little college in Marin County, there was sarod players, there were sitar players, and at the time there was a couple of violinists and some flute players, and that was it. And he told us that he wouldn't. They had a Indian woman who was teaching vocal classes, and he told all the rest of us, even including the tabla students, that he wouldn't teach us unless we also studied singing, because he said everything came from the voice. So I found, at first I had a lot of resistance at first, because I didn't think that I wasn't singing. Come on. um, and also it was difficult, these ragas and the notes and the scales, and plus the language. All the songs were in either Hindi or Bengali, so it was very difficult. But I embraced it because 𝐴𝐿 insisted. So I started, practicing the ragas and the raga scales. I had to make sure none of my roommates were home, and I even had to look out the window and make sure my neighbors' cars weren't there. And so, and then I would start practicing the songs and the ragas and the melodies and the ragas, and wow, I remember so clearly. I had an incredible, like opening a sense of like my inner world. It was like I felt my inner world for a minute, and hadn't I was been a musician, consciously since I was around 6, but a different thing happened. And well, and as I said, that took a long time for my criticism and self-judgment and self-consciousness is still there, but it took a long while for it to come to the place where I would not be paralyzed by it. You know, I have as much fear, if not more, than the next person, but it's not going to stop me from doing what I know I need to do. So, but then harmonium. So in all the vocal classes that I studied, that I took with 𝐴𝐿 himself, he would always accompany the singing with harmonium. And the way he played it was so unique and so gorgeous. He was such a master musician. And so then I started, I was curious, and I started experimenting with harmonium. I got one. I don't remember where I got my first one. And I found that yes, it's an organ. It's the sound is created by metal reeds, similar to an accordion or even a harmonica. And you pump the air in to the body of the instrument with your left hand, and you play with your right hand. And when you hold on a key, it vibrates, the air vibrates one of those metal reeds. And the sound is so vocal. So I think that's why the harmonium has become so popular as an accompaniment to singing, because it's like this like warm vocal like bed where you can sing and your voice sits in it in a way that I don't know. It's kind of like, well, how can I describe it? When I sing with guitar, my voice is a lot more naked, which is sometimes great and sometimes just like too terrifying. But when I sing with a harmonium, my voice is kind of cloaked with that sound. It's still very present. It's not like it disappears, but it's really, really supported. Um, yeah, so I think if it hadn't been for harmonium, I don't think I would have really fully come out of the singing closet. You know what I mean? And it became my comfort zone, sitting on the floor playing harmonium. I'm in a little bit of a challenge these days because I had back surgery a little over 2 years ago, and um, the only thing, I mean, I'm so much better. Prior to the surgery, I could barely walk, but I could always sit cross-legged. No matter how bad my back problems were, th- my body never hurt while I was sitting cross-legged and playing the harmonium. Um, but now I can walk miles and miles, and it's like a new body. But I have a hard time sitting on the floor cross-legged. So I'm mostly playing the harmonium, sitting in a chair with the harmonium on a table, and it's kind of like recreating my comfort zone. Um, it's different, and I'm in the process of you know making that home, because sitting on the floor with the harmonium for so many years was my most comfortable, both physically and spiritually, emotionally, every kind of place. And now I have to sit in the chair.
Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, because it's just trying to get used to that right now. It's funny you say you pump with your left and you play with your right. I changed that, didn't I, last night for the first time, because I still don't know what I'm doing. So I'm trying to learn online and so forth, but I played a chord on my left hand and pumped it with my right, and that felt more comfortable.
Are you a lefty?
No, I'm not. I'm right-handed. So I thought that was interesting, but I'm still exploring. And one thing we did, because we're so new at this, Anthony was pumping at one point and I was playing, and I thought, well, this is easy. I only have to think about one thing.
Remember, it's something that I remind people all the time when they're starting to play harmonium, that the pumping can be very gentle. It doesn't have to be, it certainly doesn't need to be in rhythm. And the first couple of pumps are strong to fill the bellows with air. And then after that, the pumping can be very gentle, particularly with a good harmonium that holds the air well. But you said you play piano, so I think that should give you like a leg up, so to speak.
This next question I have a personal interest in, and that's because you seem to have this connection to Hanuman and Ganesh. And we started on a little bit of a different path. It was more pagan originally. I mean, way back, it was all sorts of things, right? Baptized Catholic, lived in a kibbutz, it was the whole gamut. But then studying some of the Hindu stuff, suddenly Ganesh appeared to me, and I was like, wow, who is this crazy elephant? And now we even have, like, when you walk into both of our bathrooms, Ganesh greets you. And so I'm kind of curious about your path to Ganesh and then also to Hanuman, because, one could simply say, hey, you studied in India, and so you're going to automatically have a connection to those energies. But that's not true for everyone, right? Some have the connection to the goddesses. So what was that journey like for you? And did these energies appear to you, or was it something different?
Well, my connection is much more to Hanuman. And I think that originated from, well, Neem Karoli Baba's ashrams are all initially Hanuman temples. And so, well, the way they're kind of constructed, because there's a bunch around India. The first deity you see when you walk in is Hanuman, and then you walk in a little further and you see the Divine Mother Durga. So the temples are basically Hanuman and goddess temples now, which is an odd combination in India. Usually that wouldn't be the case, but that's the case with Maharaji's ashrams. And so, but in 1971, when I was there, the temples were new, and so really the primary deity was Hanuman, and so, like, my experiences with Maharaji became kind of interlinked with my just kind of curiosity about this divine monkey. And then I started reading the Ramayana, the epic tales of Rama and Sita and Hanuman. And at Maharaji's behest, I started singing this prayer called the Hanuman Chalisa, which is a long 40-verse prayer to Hanuman. And just gradually, this kind of feeling, this relationship, this feeling that Hanuman and Maharaji, became so intertwined in my own consciousness. And yeah, so now I really feel like, I pray to Hanuman, I do mantras to Hanuman, and every evening I do it's a ritual. It's not like huge. It's not like many hour long ritual, but a short, what I call puja, to my guru, to Hanuman, to my spiritual mother, and to all the deities. But Hanuman is like front and center, and I think that's because of Maharaji.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you do a puja every single night?
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Right before,
I suppose.
no, even when I'm traveling, and it's right before I go to bed, and sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's half hour, sometimes 40 minutes. It's usually not more than a half hour, and it's simple. To me, it's simple, and it's a bunch of prayers and an offering of fruit and water and light, and just kind of a touching base, so to speak, like, oh, there you are, there I am, here I am, not there I am, there you are, here I am. Oh, I look into my guru's eyes, in the picture. I look into my spiritual mother, Siddhima's eyes. I look into Hanuman's eyes and his heart, and say some mantras and prayers, and then I go to bed. Uh, but it's a connection always. Sometimes the connection I feel is very, very deep, but it's never. I never don't feel it. I don't know if that's bad grammar, but even when I'm tired and just like, don't really have it all going, even I still feel his presence
Wow, that's
to some
amazing.
extent. Yeah. And then when I'm less tired and more relaxed and not burnt out or whatever, then I feel it a lot. But it's my commitment, it's a commitment I made many, many years ago, because I'm not like a guy who spends hours and hours in meditation and stuff like that. It's just not me. But I made this commitment to do these prayers and do this simple offering every night before bed. And I haven't, I missed it. When I had really bad COVID, I missed it. Right after my back surgery, I missed it for a couple of days. I tried it, but I couldn't really. And a bunch of years ago, when I had pneumonia for a couple of days, I couldn't do it. But that's all. I mean, even when I'm traveling, it's simplified when I'm traveling, but I bring a little altar with me, like it's a small thing, and I set it up in my room, and I do these prayers every night.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I mean, that's real commitment. And, clearly this energy must be one of your guides, right? A major guide for you.
Yeah.
When I first started studying the Hindu tradition, because a lot of what I said, we came from pagan and then we moved into the Gnostics and, it's been this and then Buddhism, and it's just been this fascinating path. But initially I connected to the goddesses, never thinking I would, right? But some like Lakshmi and, kind of makes sense, right? The feminine goddesses would appear to me. And Ganesh, I don't know why, I've always loved elephants. I lived in Africa,
Everybody loves Ganesh.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not love Ganesh? I should have had him here. We have 3 of them downstairs. Then I finally got a little Hanuman statue, which now sits downstairs in our meditation and our Zen studio. And I thought, oh, there's something to this monkey. I don't know what it is, but just doing that chant somehow connected me to that energy. And I think that's probably what those, or at least it appears to me in my logical mind, my non-spiritual mind, that, when you're doing this that often, that repetition is connecting you to that energy.
I don't think there's any question about that. The mantras, in the ancient belief system, which I'm part of, the mantras are said to be another form of the deities. So it's not even the mantras called the deities. The mantras are the deities. So as you say, the mantras are saying the mantras, of course, that connection becomes established and stronger and stronger. By the way, though, you said you started out in paganism. Did you know that my band for many, many years, it's on my first 4 albums, I think, 4 or 5 albums, was the Pagan Love Orchestra.
Such a great name.
It was like a little hard in the on, what do you call it, outside of theaters, where it said Jai Uttal and the Pagan Love Orchestra. And finally, the print got very small because it was so many words. but that was the name of the band for a long time, and I still love the name. I don't use it now because I don't have a solid band. Nowadays when performing, my band is always different. Some, with some constants, but it's not a solid band. But I always thought of the word pagan as me, and this is not literal, but in my mind it was meaning seeing God in everything, seeing God in everyone. So I know that's not literally the meaning of paganism, but so it was like Pagan Love Orchestra.
But when you think about paganism, or at least in my experience, I was more exposed to the Celtic and the Roman kind of paganism, but then also having spent time in Japan, Shintoism is a form of paganism. So for me, in a way, it is that, because it's all about connecting to Gaia, to Mother Earth, to nature, and feeling that interconnectedness with nature and all that is, that we are nature, we are Gaia, and we are everybody else as well. So that connection to the all that is, for me, that is God.
I liked that interpretation. And
you write, the universe is filled with colors and melodies. They're just everywhere. If only we could see and hear them more clearly. I feel that all art exists to enhance devotional practice and devotional expression. So I just try to hear the melodies. What guidance can you give to others, especially those who are not musicians, who want to hear those melodies for themselves?
Well, it comes to a couple of things. And for my students that I have, I teach some very basic, say non-spiritual but technical practices that can help open up the voice. as well as then teaching, chants and songs and stuff like that. But if I could boil it down, I would go back to what I said about commitment. What I teach scales, I teach techniques and everything, everything, everything. But what I really beg for people is spend like 3 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, but make a commitment. Make a commitment that is so easy that you're able to keep it. And during those 3 minutes, sing a mantra that you really like. And if you have an instrument and you're more musically inclined, do it that way. But if you're not, just sing it on one note. You can clap or play a rhythm or not. But just to make this commitment to kind of offer this to the universe, offer this to the well-being of all beings, offer this to the healing of all beings, as well as to the healing of your own heart. And okay, even say I'm going to do this 5 days a week, but make a commitment and keep a commitment. And I think the practice then takes a life of its own. And once the practice takes a life of its own, then that sort of sense of hearing the colors and the melodies. I see melodies as colors and chords as colors, and but everybody sees that differently. So but intuitively being able to kind of open up to what melody lives inside of you, it doesn't happen immediately, but it will happen. And so that's what I urge people to do. And I love to share the techniques, and I feel like the skills and the craft, they're vital and they're awesome. But as far as just the practice of the heart, making that small commitment, it's like, the seed is planted. We all have the seed. We're born with the seed. But that commitment to that simple practice waters the seed and waters the seed, waters the seed. And very slowly, it sprouts. I used to have a commitment of doing 40 Hanuman Chalisas. No, doing 11 Hanuman Chalisas every morning and 11 Hanuman Chalisas every night. And so I did that for a while, and it began to drive me crazy. And so that's why now, so then I stopped and I broke my commitment, So that's why now I suggest to people to make a commitment that's easy.
Yeah.
Because in our world, the reality is that no commitment is easy, except maybe like a commitment to watch TV or something. But, no commitment to a spiritual endeavor, to an introspective practice. It's not encouraged by the world around us. So that's why I say make it easy.
I love that, and it also encourages self-expression, creativity, and that there's no one right way.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the beauties of Bhakti practices. It's all about one's individual expression. We are individuals. I know, there's this thing of we're all one, and on some level, I know that to be true, but on a living level, we're all unique, and I celebrate that uniqueness. And each one of us, even if we're using the same words, the same mantra or something, each one of us, our expression is different, and the mood of our expression is different, and that's awesome. I mean, that's like, that's the garland of humanity.
Yeah, it is indeed. And it's, something to be celebrated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So last question, let's talk about your latest album and tell us a bit about it. And we'll do like a little snippet for people at the end here, but what inspired you and what would you like to share about it?
Well, the album is called Dust and Tears. And, I might like end up regretting saying this, but I think it's my favorite of my albums. And for me, that says a lot, because there's been a lot of albums and a lot of music. But, well, all the songs in this album are inspired by different mystic Bhakti songwriters from the past. And my wife, Nubia, and I worked on all the lyrics together, which is also one of the reasons why I really, really love this project, because we've never done that before. And this is a relationship upgrade to work on a project like this together. And, I composed all the music, but the lyrics were a complete collaboration, and each song, we'd look at books of like the poems of Chandidas, the poems of this person, that person from the past, but really, and we would refer to them as poets. But the reality is that they were all songs. These were all, though we read them now in books, these were all meant to be sung. And the poignant part is that we'll never know what the melodies actually were of the original songwriters. But so we were trying to, enter that stream of devotional songwriting in our language, in English. And, most of my albums are in like Hindi, Sanskrit, Bengali songs. And each album includes one or two English songs. So it's not like I haven't delved into this. But this album is all English, and it is so devotional, and in a way, many of the songs are on the surface level heart-wrenchingly sad, because they're so much expressing longing for the beloved. But there's something that we discover, we meaning all of us who dive into this path, that going through that deep sense of longing, you kind of come out with such a sense of joy, because the primal emotion of wanting to connect to spirit is expressed, and then lo and behold, feel connected, and it's so deep, and it comes in a river of tears, and yet the joy is so palpable. It's a hard thing to explain intellectually, but I feel that is one of the threads that ties all these devotional songwriters for many centuries. The exception a little bit is the Psalms, because I do two Psalms on the album, from the Book of Psalms in the Old Testament, and these are both more prayers of. One is a prayer of just the divine, saying the divine presence eradicating fear, and the other one is, which is the Song of Moses. This is asking God for protection. So it's a slightly less romantic, maybe, but still deeply expressing the heart of the matter, the heart of the heart.
Yeah, and I think particularly right now, where people are feeling so much fear with things that are happening in the world right now, I think having a devotional song like that can give people comfort is really profound.
Yeah. Mm. And it's really profound now, but when you look at the second song in my album is called Cover Me With Your Feathers, and it's based on the 91st Psalm, which was sung by Moses. So, wow, that's a long time ago. And the words that he was singing are completely relevant to us today. So, yeah, it seems like it's more fearful now, or more scary now. Seems like it. But I know that basic, I used to call it the anxiety of separation, that has existed from the beginning.
Yes.
And people from the beginning have known that song, rhythm, dance, communal prayer are the practices that soothe that anxiety, and bridge that gap of separation. And so that's what Bhakti is about, bridging that gap of separation.
Yeah, and I do think it is kinder now than it has been. I mean, it feels like things are falling apart, but if you think about the time of Moses and the times since then, right? We're not killing each other as much.
Well, in California,
Right.
other parts of the world, we don't really need to talk about right now, but it's not so great.
Yeah, it's not so great. But if we can just focus on the ultimate, which is love, right? When we go to a place of love rather than fear, then it glues humanity together.
And simple kindness, I think, because we're not always able to, just like feel love, but we can practice kindness,
we can.
and that seems to engender love.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So beautiful words, Jai. Just really loved this time together. And I know we went a little bit over, but we got some really great insights from you and your life, which I know everyone's going to just love hearing. And we will put links on the subsequent pages so people can tune into your world, including your new album, where they can go to it and learn more. So we'll make sure that we include that as well. So any parting words for people?
No, just I want to thank you so much, Renee, for having me in your, what's it called, Blue Soul Lounge. I love that, and my love to you, my love to Anthony as well, and thank you so much.
Well, thanks for taking the time, and our love to Nubia as well, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Yes, for sure.
All right, bye for now.
Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Ram. Om Hari Marakatha Marakataya Swaha. Om Hari Marakatha Marakataya Swaha. Jai Hanuman, Jaya Jaya Hanuman. Om Guruve Namaha. Om Guruve Namaha. Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Down to my hands when you used to be in love with me. But the night ends in dust and tears. Shame fills my world as I'm leaving my home, because you used to be in love with me. But the night ends. And the red moon was my mind, and I'm down on my knees, crying for freedom, down on my knees, begging for freedom, begging for freedom. Oh, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya. Oh, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya.